Welcome everyone. My name is Marius Jigau, and the title of the talk today is the No God Delusion. A number of years back, about 4 or 5 years ago, I was studying at Monash University, and I was studying a PhD, and I was trying to understand the proteins that initiate contraction during labor. Now, this included working with human tissue, which I found really fascinating. I would get bits of tissue from ladies that had had a C-section that morning, and we would test on them, and we would try to understand what causes these contractions. One thing that I noticed when I started my studies, I noticed that most of the people in the science department believed in evolution. And I believed in creation, so I thought to myself, I need to start to research this topic. I need to try to look at this and try to understand it and see is there actual any proof for my beliefs, or does the proof suggest that evolution happened? And if it suggests that creation occurred, I wanted to be able to defend my beliefs when I spoke about it to my students. And to do this, I researched for hundreds of hours. I looked into this, and I eventually became convinced that evolution is, that there is major problems with the theory of evolution. I then went into the tea room of the physiology building. Now this, we'd do this every night. The honours students and the PhD students, we'd get together and we'd have a chat, we'd have dinner and so forth. And when I went into here, I realized that there were two girls there. One of them was a PhD student, the other one was an honours student. And I spoke to them, and the PhD student girl said, "Oh, I don't eat meat." And I said to her, "Oh, well, that's interesting. Why don't you eat meat?" She said, "Oh, well, you see, I actually believe that cows are gods." And I was like, "Okay, that's interesting." And the other girl said, "Oh, I don't drink alcohol." And I said, "Okay, well, that's also interesting. Why don't you drink alcohol?" She said, "Well, I'm a Buddhist, and I believe that drinking alcohol is sinful." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, that's interesting." And as we're having this discussion, a number of other students trickled into the room. Until about 20 minutes later, there were 9 of us there, and we just started to talk about our various beliefs, about the various ways that we looked at things. And soon enough, the discussion went towards creation and evolution. And at that point, I said, "I don't believe in evolution." When I said this, the room went quiet. You could hear a pin drop. I almost expected them to say, "Heretic, burn him." But they said to me, "How can you not believe in evolution? There's so much proof." And I said, "Look, I've been researching this topic, and I have yet to find any proof. Now, if there is proof, I'm happy to listen to it. Why don't you guys show it to me? But maybe I've missed something. And if there's proof, then obviously my belief in God is wrong, and I'll start believing in evolution." This sparked a 3-hour discussion. And during this time, my colleagues and friends realized that all this proof they believed existed for evolution wasn't actually proof at all. In fact, 2 of them, as they were leaving, they said to me, "Marius, we know that we haven't shown you the proof we said we'd show you, but it's there and we'll bring it to you and we'll show it." And I was like, "Oh, that's great. I'm happy to listen to it." Now, I remember leaving that room all up on my high horse, and I galloped up to my professor, who is a leading expert in her field. Her name is Professor Helena Parkington. Only one other person in the world does the kind of research that she does. And I went up to her and I said, "Helena, you can't prove evolution." Now, in the scientific community, this is like grabbing a rubber glove and whacking someone on the back of the head. And she turned to me and said something that was really strange. She said, "I know. You can't prove creation." I learned something very interesting that day. I learned that the people on the lower end of the educational food chain, the undergraduates, the honor students, the PhD students, they all believe that evolution is a fact. However, the people that teach this stuff, the professors, the people that are the ones teaching the other people, they know that evolution can't be proven. However, they teach it as fact. So today we're going to have a look at this topic, and we're going to have a look at what is evolution. Now, evolution can be broken down into a number of phases. The first of these would be evolution of matter, the way that matter came to be. Then this matter would arrange itself, and it would arrange itself into chemicals. So then you have evolution of chemicals. Then you would have evolution of stars and planets. After this, you would have evolution of life. And after this, you would have evolution of different species from this life. Now, there is another part to it which is called variation. So you can have variation among the species. So we're going to talk about each one of these parts separately, and we're going to have a look at what does the evidence suggest. Firstly, in the evolution of matter. So when we ask the question, how does matter come around? We're told about the Big Bang. We're told that differing textbooks will say different figures, somewhere between 13 and 20 billion years ago. Let's say 18 for the purposes of the talk today. 18 billion years ago, there was a Big Bang. And it was a really small thing that exploded. It was, in fact, smaller than a dot on the page. And this thing was spinning very fast, and it exploded. And this gave us everything that we have today. Some scientists even go further and say that this infinitesimally small dot, really, really small dot, they say it's not a long shot to go one step further and say that it was actually nothing. So essentially what they're saying is that a small dot of practically nothing exploded and gave us everything. And the reason that they do this is because of their life view, their perspective about God. You see, Christians believe that in the beginning, God created. Right? It's quite simple. Well, we have things here because an all-powerful God created everything. However, evolutionists have a problem because they don't believe in God. So they say, well, things are here, we can see them, there's obviously stuff around us, so where did it come from? So, well, they have to say, in the beginning, nothing created. And that's where you get the evolution of matter. Now, the Big Bang violates many laws that we see today. It violates the conservation of matter, conservation of energy. It violates the Einstein's theory of relativity that says that things can't fly out faster than the speed of light, because we're told that a small dot of essentially nothing blew up and things flew out faster than the speed of light. It's interesting, I was reading an article about this on Friday, and the author of the article said, oh yes, Einstein's theory of relativity only came into effect about 100 seconds after the Big Bang. And I was thinking, that's nice and convenient. Yes, the laws didn't work when we don't really want them to work or when we can't explain it. So, as we can see, evolution of matter is essentially, it's quite absurd. If you ask even a 5-year-old, can nothing explode to give us things? They'll tell you, no, it doesn't happen that way. What about the evolution of chemicals? Can chemicals evolve? You see, as matter supposedly exploded out, this would have had to come together, the quarks and the neutrinos and so forth, would have had to come together to make chemicals. Now they tell us that initially they came together and they made hydrogen and helium. But we have a big problem, because you see, an explosion causes everything to fly out away from the center. But they say that, oh no, these particles interacted with each other and made hydrogen and helium and so forth. But how can this happen when everything is flying away from each other? Again, you have another very big problem. And okay, you have hydrogen and helium. What about all the other elements? I mean, there's another 90 elements plus the synthetic ones. Where did they come around? And they say, oh, these came around inside suns. This leaves us another problem. how did suns evolve? Well, they tell us in the textbooks that what happened is the hydrogen and the helium came together under gravity and formed suns. But hang on a minute, you don't have gravity unless you have a mass. The size of a hydrogen atom makes completely insignificant gravity. This combined with the fact that they would all be flying away from each other at faster than the speed of light. Where do you get gravity from? You can't. But, well, this is what they tell us, so this is what people believe. The next step is the evolution of life, and this is something that we'll be looking into in a little bit more detail a little bit later on. And after that, we have the evolution of species. Once life has evolved, then things would diversify into the various species that we have. Again, there is no evidence for this. What we do have evidence for is variation. You see, this is something that we see. The way that humans are, our genes can vary. Certain genes can get turned on, certain other genes can get turned off, and it's the same with all the animals. This has nothing to do with evolution. But this is sold to us as microevolution. But don't be deceived. There is no new genetic information. It's only the changing of the pre-existing genetic information. It has nothing to do with evolution. God created us this way that we can have variation within our genes. It's like me going away for a couple of months and then coming back and having a beard. My wife wouldn't allow me, but say she wasn't there and I came back with a beard, and you would say, oh look, Marius has evolved a beard. No, I haven't evolved a beard. It's just something that was already a possibility within the way that I am. It's just something that happened. This is the same idea that you get with variation. Often variation happens in the embryonic stage. This is sometimes observed in scenarios such as wars. During a war when food is scarce and there's a lot of problems going on, the babies that are born are often slightly shorter and of a smaller build because certain genes get turned on and off in their genome during their development. This is simply variation. Now, microevolution, as you can see, isn't an actual thing. It's just variation. So, what is evolution? Well, you have the evolution of matter. That's not possible. You have the evolution of atoms. That, again, is not possible. You have the evolution of stars and planets. That itself is not possible. The evolution of life and species, as I will show you very shortly, that is also not possible. All we have is variation. And this is how Darwin came up with the theory of evolution. See, Darwin came up with this theory, ironically, because of his religious beliefs. It was commonly believed at the time that God made immutable species. Essentially what that means is species incapable of variation. But Darwin went to the Galapagos Islands and he saw that finches there had adapted to their environment. And he was left with two options. One option was to say, oh, maybe God didn't make immutable species. The other option, which is the one he chose, was to say, oh, well, God didn't make anything at all. Now, the way he was able to come up with this idea was because of his misunderstanding of the nature of the cell. You see, it was commonly believed at the time that the cell is made up of what they termed homogeneous protoplasm, which is a fancy way of saying just non-differentiated goo. So cells are very, very simple, just made up of some goo that's all very, very similar. So Darwin thought, well, maybe these things just came around by themselves. Today we have a very different understanding of the cell. Today we know that the cell is a highly, highly complex structure, more complex than any space mission that's ever been endeavored in our world today. I strongly believe that if Darwin knew what we knew about the cell today, that he would have never come up with this theory. A simple human cell has over 100,000 different types of proteins. And it's not 100,000 proteins, 100,000 different types of proteins. And all these proteins need to be organized in a highly specific manner for the cell to function. But we are told, oh no, you see, cells didn't evolve straight to the complex. We evolved, they tell us, simple cells. Again, this is a way of manipulating us and trying to get us to believe that cells can be simple. But there's no such thing as a simple cell. Even a bacteria, which is what we have pictured here, even a bacteria is a highly complex structure. They have over 4,000 different types of proteins, all organized in a highly specific way. This is an image of a computer representation of one of these proteins, and another one here which is smaller. Now, what would it take for this to evolve by itself? Well, essentially, what you would have to have is you would have to have the amino acids to arrange themselves in the correct order. Proteins are made up of amino acids. Usually they're made up of, not usually, all the time, they're made up of 20 amino acids. Now, in nature, we don't just find 20 amino acids. We actually find a little over 270 amino acids, but only 20 of these are used to make up proteins in the body. Now, what is the likelihood that one of these chains could come around by chance? Now, firstly, I just want to say that these don't just self-assemble. For them to assemble, they need another protein. And once they have assembled, they need another protein which folds it into the correct configuration. But let's ignore that for the moment and just say, well, maybe they can come together spontaneously. What is the probability that, let's say, a very small protein, we're going to look at a protein of 150 amino acids. Your average size protein, for example, for a yeast cell is about 464 amino acids, but we'll look at a short one, let's say 150 amino acids. The probability for one of these to come around by chance is 1 times 10 to the 164. Now, that is 1 with 164 zeros after it. Incredibly insane number. We just can't comprehend such a big number. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an example to try to make you understand how unlikely this is. The universe, as we know it today, is thought to contain 1 times 10 to the 80 atoms in the entire universe. So the likelihood of a small protein coming around by itself, it's like me saying, I have marked 2 atoms somewhere in the universe randomly. You need to find them sequentially. So what that would involve is you getting into your spaceship and traveling to one of 100,000 million galaxies. You know, you have to choose the right one. And then from there, you need to travel to 1 out of 200,000 million solar systems. And again, you need to choose the correct one. And then go to the correct planet, to the correct side of the planet, to the correct seashore, pick up the correct grain of sand. And in this grain of sand is 1 million billion atoms. That's 1 with 24 zeros after it. And you need to choose the correct one. And once you've done this, you need to do it again. And you can't make any mistakes. Right? This is absurd, absolutely impossible. However, George Wald has given us a statement. He said that given so much time, the impossible becomes possible, the possible becomes probable, and the probable virtually certain. One only has to wait. Time itself performs the miracles. Is that something that's actually possible? Most people listen to that and it sounds good, right? It sounds, well, if you have enough time, maybe even improbable things will happen. You know, if you flip a coin enough times, maybe you will get 20 heads in a row. What most people don't do, most people don't actually do the maths. Now, I love maths. So we're going to spend just a couple of minutes doing some maths. If you hate maths, I promise I'll make it painless, right? Let's have a look at what is the likelihood that this would happen in our timeline. So to work this out, you need to look at the number of atoms that would be involved in the process. You need to multiply this by the reaction speed. How many interactions are these molecules having? And then you simply multiply that by the amount of time that you have. So which atoms would be involved in this process? Well, it would be the atoms that were immediately on the surface of the world in certain places. But we want to give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's say not just all the atoms in the world, let's say every atom in the universe would be trying to achieve this. And we're going to look at this at a rate much faster than is observed today. And we're going to look at this for a time, let's say, not just the time that they believe that the universe has been around for. Let's look at a time 100,000 times more than what they say has existed. So what's the probability? Well, the probability of that is 1 times 10 to the 114. This still leaves 50 zeros unaccounted for. Now, what modern mathematics tells us today, that if anything has a probability of 1 times 10 to the 50, it is impossible. So essentially, this is impossible. It is impossible for a so-called simple cell, not just the cell, but one tiny protein to arise by itself. And if this did arise by itself by some miracle, and don't have any misunderstanding, it would require a miracle of God for it to happen. If one did arise by some miracle, well, then you need the other 4,000 different types, and they would all need to be arranged in highly specific ways, right? The probability that life can evolve it's just not possible. So what about the evolution of species? Right? They say, oh, well, you see, this animal turned into this animal. Is this something that we observe? Right? For this, you would need to see links between the various animals. Now, throughout time, we have been looking since about 160 years ago when Charlie came up with his idea. We have been looking to find these missing links. And I'm just going to show you a couple of the ones that have been suggested. Nebraska Man was suggested in 1917. They found a tooth and came up with this idea, which was later discovered to be a pig's tooth. And later on, a gentleman also named Charles, he took an ape mandible. He filed it down and he took a human cranium and he articulated them together, stained them to look like they're part of the same fossil. And for 46 years, this was believed to be the missing link. However, when it was discovered that it wasn't a missing link, that it was a forgery, it still persisted in our textbooks. Neanderthal man is one that is still in our textbooks. Neanderthal man is simply a race of people that have a pronounced supraorbital ridge. That's the area just above the eye. I have a real human skull here, and this is the supraorbital ridge. And what they tell us is, you see, this is not pronounced at all. This is what we observe today. Do you see how his is pronounced? That's very primitive. Right? Is it primitive? Well, let's have a look at 5 modern human skulls. As you can see, there is differing anatomy in these skulls. One is more robust, others are smaller. If you actually look at the Australian Aboriginal, you'll notice that he or she has more pronounced supraorbital ridge than even the skull of Neanderthal man. So what was Neanderthal man? Well, Neanderthal man was simply a race of people that died out. Maybe due to war, maybe due to a catastrophe or some disease. Simply, these people aren't around anymore. They just had slightly more pronounced supraorbital ridges. The big one that's in our textbooks today, and this is one that most people will come and talk to you about when they speak to you about evolution, is Lucy. They say Lucy is the missing link. You see here in the image, you have Lucy standing upright and her baby is standing upright, and whoever that is in the background, that guy maybe bringing her a bone, he's also standing upright, right? And you'd think that they must have found some amazing group of skeletons to give us this. This is the real Lucy. This is what they found. Now, they say to us, you see, this skeleton walked upright. Well, why? Why did this ape walk any different to other apes? They say, well, you see, the hip bone shows that she walked upright. Well, no, it doesn't. This hip bone doesn't show that at all. Said, oh no, but they say if it was twisted, then she would walk upright. And yes, if it was twisted, she would have walked upright, but you have no way of knowing that it was twisted because there isn't another one to compare to it. But they tell us that, you see, the articulation between the femur and the tibia, the knee joint there, this shows that Lucy walked upright. And the truth is that does suggest that Lucy walked upright. You see, Lucy was an Australopithecus afarensis, which is a fancy way of saying an ape. She was about so tall, and we are told that due to the articulation of the femur and the tibia, she walked upright. For 8 years, what I'm about to tell you wasn't known after this was published. It was found that the femur, the only thing that makes this skeleton different, was found at a different dig site. 2.3 kilometers away, 70 meters deeper in the strata than the rest of the skeleton. Why do people say it's part of the same skeleton? You see, Lucy was thought to have died as she fell out of a tree. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't generally see animals, once they've died, their femurs to disarticulate and keep walking, right? But this is what happened. Donald Johanson, who found her, didn't tell anyone about this. 8 years later, however, a creationist came to one of his conferences, and he asked him, where was this femur found? And he said, oh yes, it was found over here. And he's like, well, what makes you believe that it's part of the same skeleton? He's like, well, morphological similarity, which is a fancy way of saying it looks like it may. Well, see, I have a femur here. They all look kind of like this, right? There's not much difference. Some are smaller, some are bigger. They all look similar. Did this bone belong to this skeleton? I don't believe so. All the parts of the skeleton is found here, and then one part is found in another place. Well, that belongs to a different skeleton. However, none of this is told to us in any of the textbooks today. In the education system, we're not told about this. Why is that? In fact, we are told lies exactly to the opposite. If you have a look at this image here, this is an image from the California Academy of Sciences. Now, this was a animation that they made that showed that the chimpanzee walking alongside Lucy and how they walked similar, and then that Lucy walked similar to modern humans. Now, you may see two boxes around the feet of Lucy and around the feet of the human. What these boxes are showing, they put those boxes there, not me. What these boxes are showing is that the feet of Lucy are the same as the feet of the human. You see, the chimpanzee has opposable thumbs or toes, I guess, but Lucy's feet is different. You see, Lucy's feet is like a human's. And this would mean heaps if this was the case. So let's have a look at Lucy. There were no feet. Well, that's interesting. Why does the California Academy of Sciences show us that this is proof that Lucy walked like a human when none of this was found? They are directly aiming to deceive us. And this is very common. In fact, at the St. Louis Zoo in Missouri, they made a statue of Lucy and they gave her human feet. And one of the local associate professors said, this statue's feet and hands are simply wrong and they mislead the public. He wrote this and he wrote it to the zoo. And you'd expect the zoo to be like, oh, we didn't realize that they were wrong, we better fix it. But this is what they said. They said, we cannot be updating every exhibit based on every new piece of evidence, he says. Forget about the evidence, right? What we look at is the overall exhibit, the impression it creates. We think that the overall impression this exhibit creates is correct. Essentially what they're saying, forget about the evidence. We are concerned with the impression. We are concerned with the idea we want you to believe. As we've seen today, the missing links are still missing. Charles had a problem with this. When he wrote his book, he actually wrote, why is not then every geological formation and every stratum full of such intermediate links? He realized that this is a problem. So he's like, why aren't we finding all these intermediary species? He continues to write, geology assuredly does not reveal any such graduated organic chain. And this perhaps is the most obvious and gravest objection which can be urged against my theory. You see, Charles believed that they would eventually find these missing links. But it's been 160 years since then, and they still haven't found any of them. Another thing that I wanted us to briefly have a look at, for us to form new species, we need something which is called genetic mutations. Now, do we observe genetic mutations today? Yes. You're right. We observe many genetic mutations today. In fact, I'm here to confess that I am a mutant. Right? My superpower is that I am colorblind. Right? My grandfather passed it through to my mum, and it came to me, and the cones in my eye have less receptors for green and for red, and I can't see colors properly like most people do. In fact, I bought some color blindness glasses, which I put them on sometimes, and I'm like, oh wow, the colors are so vibrant. They're really amazing. It's you guys see this every day, but for me it was like, wow, right? This is the result of a genetic mutation. Another thing is Down syndrome and hemophilia. These are also results of genetic mutations. However, these are all examples of the degradation of genetic material. It's not new genetic material that causes this problem. It's destroying pre-existing genetic material. Now, to make a new species, you need to add new genetic material. In fact, a species contains around 200,000 million base pairs. Now, for you to have a new species, you don't need the whole new organism. You need probably a minimum of about 5% more new genetic material. Right? Now, this would still be around 10 million base pairs of new genetic information. Now, we're told that there's been around 2,000 million species, so based on the time frame, if you do the maths, you realize that we should be seeing a new species every 3 or 4 months. Right? Is this what we see? How many genetic mutations do we observe? Because you'd need to see heaps of them every day for this to occur. Well, I've done the maths, I've looked into the research, and I've found how many genetic mutations we have observed. And this is the number. 0. We have never, ever observed one single positive genetic mutation. Ever. So, what makes you think that we can evolve if we've never observed a positive genetic mutation? So, evolution of species, it's not possible. The only thing that we see is variation. And this is marketed to us. You see, evolutionists say, oh, if you look at the variation, you look at, well, they term it microevolution. You see, oh, this example and this and this and this example. And they try to use that to prove the rest of part of evolution, which doesn't actually occur. So now we've had a look at the problems with evolution. Let's have a look at the other side of the coin. Is there any evidence to suggest that this world was created? Right? I'm glad that you asked. Let's have a look. The universe appears to have come around with mankind in mind. Now, why do I say that? Well, there are a number of constants in the universe. I've found about 40 of them that need to be exactly so, otherwise life isn't possible. One of these is the expansion of the universe. The universe is expanding at a highly specific rate, and it needs to be expanding at this rate. The rate is specific to 1 × 10⁻121. That's 1 with 121 zeros after it. It needs to be that specific. If it's any less, then the universe would implode in on itself. If it would be any more, then planets and solar systems and galaxies would be flying away and there wouldn't be the ability to sustain complex life. What about the galaxy? The galaxy and our location in it appears to have been created with us and with life in mind. You see, we find ourselves about 2/3 of the way out from the center of the galaxy. If we were any closer to the middle, then there'd be too much radiation to support complex life. If we were any further out, then there wouldn't be enough heavy elements to support complex life. It's also interesting that we happen not to be in the spiral arms. Do you see how this has 2 spiral arms? We happen to be in between them, which allows us to be able to see out. If we weren't, we wouldn't be able to see out. What about our solar system? Our solar system appears to have been created with us in mind. The planet is just the right distance away from the sun. If we were any further, it would be too cold. If it would be any closer, then it would be too hot. The Earth's orbit also appears to be exactly the way that we need it. You see, the Earth's orbit is different from every other planet in our solar system. Every other planet in our solar system, we have an elliptical orbit. Earth has essentially a circular orbit. It's slightly elliptical, but it's predominantly circular. If Earth's orbit was more elliptical, then we would have periods of extreme heat and periods of extreme cold. But it appears that it is exactly the way it needs to be. What about the sun? The sun just happens to be the right color. You see, if the sun was more towards the red or more towards the blue, then photosynthesis either wouldn't work or wouldn't work anywhere near as efficiently, and life as we know it on this planet wouldn't exist. The moon also happens to be the exact correct size and the correct distance from the Earth. If it was any closer or any bigger, we would have massive tidal waves and life as we know it couldn't exist. If it was any smaller or any further away, well then you wouldn't have the sea moving around and oxygenating itself, and it would become stale and things would die. And life as we know it wouldn't exist. What about the atom? The atom appears to have been created with life in mind. You see, the proton is much bigger than the electron. In fact, the proton is 1,836 times bigger than the electron. But the charge is identical. If the charge wasn't identical, then life as we know it couldn't exist. If the electron was any bigger, or if the proton was any smaller, then life as we know it just couldn't exist. What about a worldwide flood? Is it possible? I was actually speaking to someone not long ago, and they said, Marius, do you really believe in a worldwide flood? And I said, yeah, I do. Right? There is a lot of evidence to suggest that there was a worldwide flood. I was at the Grand Canyon, I think it was probably about 2007, 2008. And I remember, it's just amazing. It's so big. The images that we see just don't even do it a fraction of justice. I took a helicopter and we flew down inside the Grand Canyon. It was a real amazing experience. And I noticed something very interesting when I was there. I noticed that there are these lines all throughout the canyon. Now, what we are told in the textbooks today, we're told that, oh, you see, this was the surface of the world long, long ago. But having a look at them, I noticed something very strange. Do you see how all the lines are flat? Boom, flat. 200 million years, flat. 300 million years, flat. 505 million years, flat. It appears that long ago, there was no wind, no rain, everything was just flat. Is that what we observe today? No. No, we look at the topography of the world today, and things go up and down and every which way. We don't have a flat Earth. Now, the Cretaceous layer is a layer that is found just above the Jurassic layer. Now, you may have heard of the Jurassic layer before. This speaks about the movie, the Jurassic Park, with all the dinosaurs and flesh and blood and things that were happening, right? The Cretaceous layer is thought to have existed just after that. This is a very, very interesting layer. It is found everywhere in the world. And you can either have it in like very small lines, as you see in the picture on the top left there, or in the picture on the bottom right, you can have a huge Cretaceous layer. Now, what does this Cretaceous layer consist of? Well, the Cretaceous layer essentially consists of marine animals, small shells, and various marine creatures. Most of these creatures are actually microscopic. Most of the Cretaceous layer, to actually see the creatures, you need to put it under a microscope. And these can come around very, very quickly, in a matter of months. They can build up huge Cretaceous layers in a matter of months. Now, in the sea today, what happens is when one of these organisms dies, it starts sinking. If the sea is deep enough, then it will essentially dissolve as it's going down. However, if the sea isn't deep enough, what will happen is it'll reach something underneath. For example, in certain areas of the sea, we have underwater mountains. And if you go scuba diving in this area, you'll see that these mountains appear, they look like they have snow on them. They have like these white tops. And essentially what it is Cretaceous organisms that have fallen down, and they are now on the top of these mountains. Now you may say, all right, Marius, why are we hearing about this? What's this got to do with evolution? Well, something very interesting, that the Cretaceous layer is the only layer that is found throughout the whole world. It's said to be universal. Now, this layer, think about it for a second, is found everywhere in the whole world. Now, what does this suggest? Well, to me, this suggests that the whole world was underwater at one point. You can find fossilized seashells on the summit of Mount Everest. How did they get there? A worldwide flood is the only way to explain these things. Another thing that I was recently researching was paleocurrents. Paleocurrents looks at the various layers. When they examine these layers, they look at them and they try to examine which way the direction of flow was in this layer. Now you may look at at the Paleozoic, the Mesozoic layers, and you find something very interesting. When you put them all together, now people, whenever they do a dig, they look at these paleocurrents and they send the information, and there is thousands, I think there's over 1 million of actually recorded direction of flow in paleocurrents. Now, when you have a look at America and Africa and other continents, you find something very interesting when looking at paleocurrents. You find that in certain stratas, for example, in the Paleozoic age, you'll find that in North America, all direction of flow was in one direction over the entire country. How does current flow in one direction over the entire country if it's not all underwater? It's not possible. And it's interesting, you look at the next layer up and you'll find it's all going in the opposite direction. We see nothing like that today. Today we see the currents would be going towards basins and towards the outsides of the edges where the sea is. This is clear evidence for a universal flood. However, a famous scientist, Todd Scott, writes, even if all the data points to an intelligent designer, such a hypothesis is excluded from science because it's not naturalistic. Think about this for a second. What he's saying is, if it looks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, if it walks like a duck, if it smells like a duck, and if it tastes like a duck, oh, wait a second, we don't believe in ducks. It must be a puppy. Right? This is essentially what he's saying. The Bible, we shouldn't be shocked about this because the Bible tells us this would happen. The Bible tells us that the time will come when people will not put up with sound doctrine. Instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around them a great number of teachers to say what their itching ears want to hear. This is what we found today. People's itching ears today don't want to hear about God. They want to hear that there is no God, that they're not responsible for the consequences of any of the things that they do. The Bible tells us clearly, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. You see, we are told today that this is a question of fact versus faith. We are told that faith is what creationists believe in, and fact is what evolutionists believe in. But we've seen today that evolution cannot be proven. So this makes it a question of faith versus faith. Now, there is something that when I think about people that believe in evolution, there's something I really admire about them. I really admire the faith that these people have. You see, if you look and you see that the universe was made with us in mind, our galaxy and solar system was made with us in mind, our planet and moon was made with us in mind, we have atoms that were made with us in mind, we have flat layers and Cretaceous layers and paleocurrents that all suggest a global flood. However, they still have the faith to believe in evolution. Also, when you look at the evolutionary process, the evolution of matter is not possible, evolution of atoms isn't possible, evolution of stars and planets, evolution of life, evolution of species is not possible. However, they still have the faith to believe in evolution. So, this brings us down to two options. We ultimately have two options in what we're going to believe. We can believe in evolution, which essentially tells us that we arose from nothing, life is meaningless, and that we will eventually die and we will cease to be. Or we can look at what Christianity and creationism tells us, that we are created to be sons and daughters of God, that life is full of purpose, and that we are destined to live forever. Now, I want you to think about these two options, because I realized something very interesting as when I was first coming up with this presentation. I realized that both the faith that evolutionists have and both the faith that Christians have about what will happen at the end of time is correct. If you believe in evolution, then at the end you will die and cease to be. If you believe in creation, if you believe in Jesus, then you can live forever. We shouldn't be surprised that evolution is so popular in the world today. The Bible actually foretells it. This is one of the prophecies that's found in the Bible. You see, we are told in 2 Peter chapter 3, verses 3 to 5, above all, you must understand that in the last days scoffers will come, scoffing and following their own evil desires. They will say, "Where is the coming He's promised? Ever since our ancestors died, everything goes as it has since the beginning of creation." But they deliberately forget that long ago, by God's words, the heavens came into being and the earth was formed. You see, we are told that at the end of time, people will deliberately, right? They will choose to forget that God made this world. It's not because there isn't any evidence for creation. There is, as we've seen today, there is a lot of evidence for creation. And I've only touched on just a few subjects. There's like way more information than this, right? There is a lot of information and evidence that suggests that Evolution is impossible. However, people are deliberately choosing not to believe that God created the world. Now, I want to ask you tonight, which one will you choose? What will you choose to believe today based on what will you choose to believe that we originated from? I don't know about you, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Just wanted us to bow our heads for a closing prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you that you are our Creator. We thank you that you are a wonderful and magnificent God and that you created life on this planet. Lord, we want to praise you and serve you not just here, Lord, but forever in eternity. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.